Hi, my name is Larry Soleil. This is Sue Thompson. We found an awful lot of gold with our Goldmaster VSATs, and today we'd like to show you how to do the same thing. We're putting together this instructional videotape, and we're going to try to show you some of the same tips and techniques that we've used to find all of our gold nuggets. All right, the first thing we'd like to do is cover the different controls on the machine and their various functions, and then later we'll get into exactly how to set them up on different kinds of ground. The first control we want to talk about is the gain. It's also your on-off knob. When you first turn the machine on, the iron ID meter will do a battery check for you for a couple seconds and then drop down into its operating position, and then you can turn the gain knob up to whatever level you want to try to hunt at. If the ground that you're trying to hunt in is too hot, if you turn it up to 10 and it squeals like this, then you know that your front end of your coil is overloading and you're going to have to back off on your gain some. In different areas, you're going to have to try different settings to see what level you can run at, and the stability of the machine will tell you a lot about that. As we set up in some of these different types of ground, we'll get into that in a lot more detail.
The toggle switch that sits right above the gain knob is the mode or SAT switch. It says SAT to the right, PP for pinpoint in the center, and reset to the left. 90% of the time you're going to be keeping that toggle switch in SAT. And there's a second knob on the bottom of the box, which is the variable SAT, the speed of the SAT, and we will be covering that later on in the video. Pinpoint is a very slow SAT. It helps you pinpoint your targets, especially very large targets. Reset is 50 times faster SAT and helps bring the threshold back at a very rapid rate.
All right, the next control we'd like to go over is the threshold control. It's in the upper right-hand corner of the box. Once your machine is turned on and you've got it in the SAT mode, set your headphones, if you're using them, to a comfortable level, and then adjust the threshold. To do this, turn it down to where you can't hear it, and then slowly turn it up until you can just hear it start to buzz, like someone frying bacon in the next room. If it's really loud or really quiet, you may have to turn it several times because it is a 10-turn knob that allows you to set it very precisely.
The next control we're going to talk about is the iron ID toggle switch located at the top center of your detector. The iron ID needs to be in the straight up off position in order to tune and balance your detector. Once your detector is tuned and balanced, then you can turn it on. In the off position, gold and iron sounds identical. In the on position, the gold sounds exactly the same as it did in the off position, but the iron spits at you. It gives a very broken signal, and the needle on your meter jumps back and forth between iron and non-iron. The needle on the nugget stands still. The iron ID is not recommended in highly mineralized ground.
Okay, the next control we want to talk about is your ground balance control. The ground balance is actually three knobs that all work together. The coarse ground balance is in the lower left-hand corner of your machine. The medium and fine ground balance knobs are the stacked knobs in the middle. To begin with, set all your knobs in a straight-up position, especially the coarse and the medium knobs. You're going to pump the coil up and down towards the ground and listen to that threshold tone and what's happening with it. If it doesn't sound the same as the coil goes towards and away from the ground, then you're not in proper ground balance for that piece of ground. As you can hear, we're getting all kinds of racket happening here. What you want to do in order to ground balance this, I'm going to start with the coarse ground balance, and I'm going to treat it like a simple volume control on a radio. And you want to pay attention to what that threshold tone does as the coil goes towards the ground. That's the only thing you have to listen to. If you pay attention right now, you'll hear that the sound as the coil goes towards the ground is getting quieter. Boing is going away from the ground, but don't worry about that. We're only concerned with towards the ground. I'm going to treat this coarse ground balance knob like a simple volume control. The tone is getting quieter, going towards the ground, so I'm going to turn it up. If it was getting louder, I would turn it down. So I'm going to turn it up a little bit, and we'll try it again. It's still getting quieter going towards the ground. If you get too far, there's an obvious change and it gets louder. So we've gone too far and I need to back up a little bit. It's still getting louder going towards the ground, so I'm going to turn it down a little more. Okay, I'm very close now. Now I can go to my fine ground balance knob and fine tune it. When you get to where there's hardly any change going up and down, that's what we call a neutral ground balance. This ground is highly mineralized and it's hard to eliminate all of the sound, and you may run into that, but you want it to get as close to no change as possible. The last control we need to talk about is on the back of the machine, and that's the variable SAT control. I'm standing here on a cliff of serpentine, and we've got some really nasty mineralization. This stuff is mostly iron, and it's got all sorts of variability in it. I've also got a small nugget down here, and we're going to show you one instance where you might want to use the variable SAT and how to go ahead and adjust it and get it set up for the optimum performance. It's a real good idea to carry a small test nugget with you when you're out in the field, especially if you're going to be in difficult ground like this. I just placed a little nugget of about 2.5 to 3 grains right there on that black rock. There's some severe mineralization over here. This is mostly serpentine bedrock I'm standing on, and as you'll notice as I swing across these, I've already ground balanced to this stuff. The response from the nugget and from that ground is nearly identical. So if you were out hunting in this stuff, you'd have a real hard time differentiating between the ground and the targets. You'd be pounding on this stuff a lot trying to find targets, and there wouldn't be any, and you might pass up some of these thinking it was the ground. The variable SAT will help to smooth the ground out in a situation like this and let you find your targets. What I'm going to do is start sweeping back and forth across these and slowly turn up the SAT until I have optimized the sound off the nugget. Let's try this and see what happens. Now, if you go too far with the SAT, you'll lose a lot of depth and pretty much tune out your targets also. As you can see, I'm not getting much response here. This is full SAT. So I'm going to back off again until the target gives me the best response I can get and the ground is still pretty smooth. Right about there is probably where I'd go ahead and hunt this patch of ground. This patch of ground right here has got some pretty bad mineralization. The sort of greenish stuff that will show up on the camera is some serpentine. There's some red dirt in here. It's a pretty rotten area. I've got the gain turned clear down to 3 on my machine. I've got the SAT up about halfway. A few weeks ago I popped 4 nuggets out of this little stretch right across here. So we've taken and moved a few rocks up in here, and we thought we'd see if we could get lucky and pick up 1 or 2 more for the try to show you some proper hunting techniques and coil control while we're at it. Get my ground balance back here. A bit of change in the ground. One thing I recommend is to find the coldest piece of ground you can, which means where there's where the signal makes the least noise going towards the ground, and tune to that patch of ground, because you don't ever want to hunt with a negative ground balance. As you're hunting, always try to overlap your sweeps a lot, especially if you're working a patch like this where there's been known to have gold in it. What I do, I draw an imaginary line with the front of the coil as I sweep along, and on the next sweep of the coil, the middle of the coil goes along that line and I draw a new one. And if you keep doing that in that manner, the coil is always the middle of the coil, which is the most sensitive, will hit all the ground that you're hunting over. Try to keep the coil very close to the ground. Try to follow the contours. As the ground goes up and down, you need to do that also. And you're hearing a lot of noises in here. I can hear them. And they're fairly broad. You'll notice that none of them are nice and clean like a target signal. Kind of broad, one way, mostly mineralization noises. Notice I'm not trying to hunt too fast. You want to give the machine plenty of time to get down into the dirt and try to locate targets for you. That's a nice big noise, but it's not clean at all. It's not sharp. Probably mineralization. When you're into these holes where you move these rocks, really work them over. It's a really good place for a nugget to be hiding, is down inside there. That's what we're after. Nice clean hit from every direction. I've dug quite a few pieces of lead out here, and it's quite possible that's what this is also, but I know there's gold here, so we're going to check this one out. First thing to do is just kind of knock a bunch of the junk out of the way. Let your coil get a little closer to the ground. Get a good listen to what's in there. Oh, that's nice. I like that. It doesn't sound too deep, so I'm just going to take the edge of my boot, kind of scrape a little bit of the dirt away, see if I move it. Right there. Oh. It's loud enough, I'm not too worried about losing it, so I'm going to go ahead and move about an inch of dirt here and see if I can get it out of there. You see this soil is really nasty. There's hot red soil mixed right in with the serpentine. It's really difficult to hunt this stuff. The VSAT makes it a lot easier with that variable SAT. You can speed it up and really smooth out this kind of ground. Alright, whatever it is, got out of the hole now. Put away some of the dirt. Right there in that little pile of dirt. I'm going to take my cup. The reason we use a plastic cup, the machine is so sensitive, it'll pick up the salt and the minerals in your hand. So we use a cup to isolate the target from our hand. Otherwise, if you just scooped up some dirt in your hand and went over the coil, you wouldn't be able to tell if you had anything in there or not. This is loud enough you might. On some of the small ones you never would. Give it a little shake to go to the bottom. Missed it. Try it again. Watch. Here it is. The process now is to dump about half the dirt in your hand. Check the cup again. If it's not in the cup, we know there's nothing in there, so I can fish this dirt away. Dump about half of it back in the cup. Target's in there. Now I've dug more than one nugget out of some of these holes. So the dirt that's in my hand I haven't checked yet. Don't throw it over your shoulder. Just set it down next to your dig hole and check it again when you're done. Half the dirt back in my hand. Target's still in the cup. And just keep splitting it that way until you get down to just a little bit, and then you look and see what you got. I see it. Hot dog, we got one. It's got some crud on it. You might be able to see the gold in there if they can zoom in on it. Looks like about maybe 8 or 10 grain nugget. That's what it's all about. Yes! You've heard us talking about mineralization throughout the tape. I'd like to go over a couple of very specific kinds of mineralization with you right now. The first one is ironstones. If you do much hunting in the field, you'll hear this bong bong sound. And that's your typical ironstone response. You'll notice that the threshold sound goes quiet as I go over the stone, and then you get a bong on the side of it. And it's very different from a response from a target. I've got about a pennyweight nugget sitting on this rock here, and you can hear it's a very clean signal right in the middle. And with the ironstone, there's a bong on the sides. Now the problem with